Hello and welcome along to the TABtouch preview of AFL action for this upcoming round. David Shortte and Digby Beacham with you. G'day Diggers.
Shorty, it's been a grind.
It has been a grind, it's been tough. Hopefully it's a little easier this weekend, and it kicks off with Thursday night football this evening where we see the Cats playing host to Port Adelaide at Simmons Stadium. Well, we saw last week, Digby, that home ground advantage can be very strong for Geelong at this venue. Betting on the game though wouldn't suggest so tonight. It's $1.60 out to $1.72 for the Cats. Port Adelaide have been well backed as the outsider, $2.35 into $2.15.
Interesting move that, isn't it, with Port Adelaide, given they have been exposed to some top four sides already this season, have come up short down in Geelong, as you said, Shorty. They haven't won there for 10 years. I'll be tipping the Cats.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a long time since you can remember seeing Port go there and knock off the Cats. They're ticking along well last week. Their ferocious tackling was exceptional in that second quarter in particular, and they look pretty good. So if they can front up with something like that, Port will have a job on their hands. We move to the Friday night football. Sydney taking on Hawthorn. Good support for the Red and Whites. They're back in a bit of form. 124 into 120. The Hawks $3.90 out to $4.50.
I think this could get nasty, Shorty. I'm actually thinking Sydney are rolling, and they were really, really good last week, weren't they, against St Kilda. Hawthorn just can't score. They can't move the football, and they don't play four quarters. So if Sydney get the ball and on their terms early doors through that midfield of theirs, I think they can really light up the Hawks.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sydney will win and win well. They just seem to have a little bit of spring back in their step at the moment, the Red and Whites. And traditionally, when they're at SCG, they are hard to beat. On to the Saturday action. The Western Bulldogs take on St Kilda. Good money about for the Doggies, 150 into 148. St Kilda $2.60 out to $2.65.
The Bulldogs have to win one soon, Shorty. They've been very good, but they are 5-4, and they're only clinging to a spot inside that top 8. They need to get on their bike. I think they will here on Saturday. I think they can win.
Yeah, St Kilda, they've been an up and down sort of side, haven't they, this season? Their best has been good. Their poor stuff has been really poor. Western Bulldogs, while they've been getting beaten, they've been well in games, and I think that's important for them here. I would expect that they can bounce back to form. I'm pretty sure this looks a game where they can grab the 4 points and get a little bit of confidence back. Western Bulldogs for both Digby and I there. We move on to the game up in Alice Springs where Melbourne take on Gold Coast. $1.45 and firm here, the Demons. Gold Coast $2.70 out to $2.75. Of course, the Suns coming off that disappointing performance up in Shanghai. Melbourne, another side like St Kilda. They came off that wonderful victory going back 2 weeks ago at Adelaide, but then we talked about it last week. It'll mean nothing if you cough up the game to North Melbourne, and they coughed up the game to North Melbourne.
Yeah, we fell into them, didn't we, Shorty, last week, Melbourne, thinking that they might have turned the corner with that win over in Adelaide, but they were poor early. They mounted a comeback as they can do, but their inability to play four quarters is proving really, really costly. They've got a ballistic style of play. They move the ball very, very aggressively, but it leaves them exposed at the back end. And look, I'll go again with Melbourne, but they need to tidy up some areas.
Yeah, they do indeed. They're clearly missing Jesse Hogan and also Maxi Gawn, two key operators for them, and they're not going to be here in this game, so they need to find a way within that to win without that particular duo. We move to the MCG. This is the feature match of the round, the Dreamtime game between Richmond and Essendon. Richmond here $1.80 out to $1.83. Essendon $2 into $1.97. Digby, this is a game really interesting. Richmond have coughed up heavy leads to lose their last couple late in the game. Essendon last week were excellent against West Coast.
Yeah, they were. They're in good form, Essendon, and they need to be respected. This game has a really genuine big game feel about it, doesn't it? But you'd be surprised if they didn't get 85,000 at the MCG. It's a momentous game. It's a great game, the Dreamtime at the G. It's a wonderful concept. I just think Richmond's form overall has been better than Essendon's, Shorty. We know what happens in a close game with the Tigers, but I'll take them on trust. And again, they were 5-0. They're now 5-4. They cannot afford to go 5-5.
No, they cannot. I guess if you're looking at the big picture with Richmond, their losses have been by narrow margins. They've been playing pretty good football for the majority of the season, just not quite finishing it off. And as you touched on that great start to the season, this is their chance to grab a four-pointer and just straighten their season up. I think they'll do that. But look, if Essendon can play like they did last week and Richmond let them off the chain like West Coast did, they're a dangerous outfit. Should be an absolute beauty there on Saturday night. Also on Saturday, over there at the Adelaide Oval, Fremantle take on Adelaide. All the money here for the home side, the Crows, 117 into 113. Fremantle $5 out to $5.75. Fremantle have been playing really well. finding ways to win, coming from behind in games to get the cash. Adelaide, well, they were the form side to start the season. They bounced back with a big win over Brisbane, but you can't read a lot into that. They're a long way apart here, and I thought it may have just flattered Adelaide, this particular market. I thought it might be a little bit closer than the 113 plays 575.
Yeah, look, it was always going to be a pretty significant task to go over there and win, and then we had the news that Aaron Sandilands wouldn't go. Now, Jonathan Griffin is in good form at the Waffle and is a senior body, so he'll be okay. You need to slow down Adelaide's ball movement, and I think if there is one coach in the competition that can throttle an opponent, it's Ross Lyon. And we saw what Melbourne did. They were physical against them a fortnight ago. I expect that the Dockers will be very unsociable as well. Whether that can correlate into a victory, I'm not so sure. But I think I'm with you, Shorty. I'll tip Adelaide, but I don't think it'll be a blowout.
No, I'm not wanting to get involved too heavily with Adelaide to win by a massive margin in the game. But like Digby, you're happy enough to have them on top. I don't think they'll be dropping many home games this year. I think they would have learnt from that loss to Melbourne a couple of weeks ago that you've got a front up ready to roll. On to the Sunday action, the MCG. Collingwood playing host to Brisbane. They looked to be in all sorts of strife at half-time last week, the Pies, but rallied back to get the 4 points. Brisbane, well, they're the only side in the AFL right now that are easy beats. Everyone else is competitive in games. Brisbane have just been the laughing stock this season. They're a really ordinary outfit. They've got a lot of younger players that just aren't up to it to this point in time, and this is a game where you'd expect the Pies to really get a hold of the Lions and win well.
Yeah, agree, Shorty. The only saving grace for Brisbane is there's a bit of rain forecast, so that might limit the damage, but all things being equal, Collingwood go there, get the job done, and stay in the conversation for a top 8 spot.
Definitely. On to the other game here between Carlton and North Melbourne at Etihad Stadium. There's been good support for the Blue and Whites in this one. North Melbourne 148 into 140. Carlton $2.65 out to $2.90. The Blues were okay, particularly for the first half last week up against Fremantle. North Melbourne did the job last week against the D's.
They did, and look, Carlton have been okay and North have been okay. The issue for Carlton, I see, Shorty, is that Sam Rowe was out for the season with that anterior cruciate ligament injury that he sustained here in Perth last weekend. One side that you don't want to be exposed against in terms of a lack of height in the back half is North Melbourne. They've got Waite, they've got Wood, they've got Ben Brown. Whether that means Wiedering has to go back, which deprives them of a goal-kicking option. We know they don't kick a lot of goals, Carlton. I think the game sits up well for North.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the big boys up front really do hold the key in this game for North Melbourne. And Brown and Waite in particular in combination are starting to look pretty dangerous together, aren't they?
They are, and Wood's a beauty. North signed him up last year on a 4-year deal for some good money, and people were raising their eyebrows. Sydney were into him big time. I think he can be a star going forward. Surely. All
right, and the final game sees West Coast taking on GWS, a banged up GWS, $1.70 into $1.60 for the Coasters. The Giants $2.15 out to $2.35.
I think that's a good price for West Coast. I know we sit there and we criticise them for their efforts in Melbourne, and justifiably so. They were putrid last weekend, but back at home we know the standard that they set. We've seen them bounce back from disappointing losses already this season. GWS's injury list is extensive. On top of that, you've got Lobb and Steve Johnson this week, which is also impacts with Devon Smith last week. So it's hard to see how they'll kick a score, GWS, for mine. I think they've dodged a couple of bullets, so I don't think they'll dodge another one this week.
No, this West Coast at home, it's a proven formula. They generally do find a way to get the cash, and they get GWS at the right time, seemingly. Well, Digby, it's unanimous this week. We've gone the same 9.
Frightening, isn't it?
It is disturbing, particularly given how we've tracked through the year. My good self in particular has gone well below par. I apologise, punters. It's been horrendous viewing most weekends. Anyway, we'll give it another stab this weekend. We're both going with Geelong to be too good for Port Adelaide, Sydney to take care of Hawthorn, the Western Bulldogs to be too good for St Kilda, Melbourne to take care of business up against the Gold Coast, Richmond to prevail in the Dreamtime clash, Adelaide to take care of Fremantle in the game over there at the Adelaide Oval, and in the Sunday fixtures, Collingwood to win big against Brisbane, North Melbourne to knock over the Blue Baggers, and in the final game, West Coast to defeat GWS. Diggs, let's get into our multis for this week. How are you going to play it?
I'm going Sydney, the Western Bulldogs, Collingwood and West Coast Shorty. I think they can all win, and that is paying $3.04.
3.04. All right, I'm going the Cats tonight to be too good for Port Adelaide. Rolling with the Western Bulldogs to bounce back to winning form. And I think Collingwood will win by 25 or more. I've gone relatively conservative there. That happens this weekend. We're looking at $3.16 for the multi. And our novelty for this week, Digby?
I've gone Sydney, Adelaide and West Coast to lead at halftime and then go on and win their game, Shorty, and that is $3.68. I'm pretty confident with that.
Yeah, that seems pretty gettable. And from a novelty perspective, I'm going tonight's game. Mitch Duncan to get 30 plus disposals. He's in pretty good nick at the moment, Mitch. And well, if Geelong are going to win, they're going to need a strong contribution from the big man, Tommy Hawkins. Him to kick 3 goals or more, $3.10 if that combo happens tonight. So go and get plenty of it, Mitch. And then big Tomahawk, make sure you slot a few for us up front. And the $3.10, I'll be stepping into a little bit of that tonight. Don't forget first goal scorer special this upcoming weekend with TABtouch on selected games. If your player doesn't kick the first but goes on to kick the second or third, it's money back up to $50. But a string of other great bets available this weekend with TABtouch. As always, Diggs, great catching up.
Pleasure, mate.
Good luck, punters. Hopefully it's a winning weekend for you. Make sure if you're punting, you do it with TABtouch. We'll catch you next week.